All right, so I promised to provide a summary of this interdisciplinary curricula project that we initiated last ECSS. And somehow hoping that we would already have some kind of a written report on this at this point, but we don't. So I just kind of introduce to the data and the observations based on the data wait for your comments. So the background was the last ECS, the theme of this workshop was interdisciplinarity or informatics and interdisciplinarity. From many aspects, we had a, okay, I wish I had a program here, but we had like a societal aspect, I think, some kind of societal impact, which was, I think, Martin Glynch was leading that. And anyway, we had many tracks there. And then there was somehow discussion after this as a follow-up to this meeting. So now we have discussed the many aspects of interdisciplinarity. I think it was evaluation, teaching, research. It's a very broad and complex topic. So what should we kind of concretely do on this theme? So except just to kind of discuss and commiserate about the complexity of everything. So then we had a small, I think this, and anyway, we had a small planning team, which consisted of Paolo Azzeni, Martin Glynch, Gerard Steinhardt, and myself. Am I still missing someone? I hope I'm not missing anyone from this list. And Enrico was also participating in sort of discussions. What should we concretely do? And one of the topics that somehow emerged from this meeting was, what are all these areas that are, people coming from different areas kind of making use of informatics in their teaching. And there are this kind of emergent, like informatics related curricula. There's bioinformatics and there is business informatics and maybe now there's quantum informatics and there's computational social science. And so to what extent are these other emerging fields like, let's say, kind of informatics heavy as opposed to, social sciences heavy or biosciences heavy? So how much of informatics and what type of informatics is actually contained in these interdisciplinary programs? So this was like the starting point, trying to somehow, well, it said here, it says map out the landscape of this current informatics teaching arrangement interdisciplinary curriculum, both from the point of view, at least for myself, so to understand what is going on, and also to see if there is something, if there's some kind of a, what's the kind of federation or consolidation that one could do there, so to offer certain kinds of informatics packages or modules for these various interdisciplinary initiatives. So it says, okay, see if one could derive from these data some common models and or recommendations on how informatics teachings in an interdisciplinary context should be organized. It's a very open question, but one needs to, first, before one starts doing anything, one needs to understand what is happening out there. And they're kind of optimistic that the idea was the eventual outcome could be either a common informatics core curriculum or more like some discipline-specific planning models or recommendations. And now I realize I missed, so the list of the planning team is there, so it's Paolo Azzeni. I missed Bart Demon from Carl Leuven, who was specifically interested in this teaching topic, but then he thought, well, he left this team, so he's no longer at this meeting. But Paolo is there, and Martin is there, and Gerald is there, and Enrico is there, and Franziska Haufe, who was our, Influence Europe coordinator, also moved to a different job. I think actually she became a teacher, but no, Kitvan here is, is now the new coordinator of this activity. So anyway, so we had this planning meetings, then we actually a little bit of pilot data collection to get an understanding of the kind of preliminary understanding of the landscape. Then we had a kind of a national associations meeting to touch base, as the Americans say. Then we had the full data collection at end of spring, and then there was supposed to be a kind of a report on this, but the report didn't happen, so I just kind of tell you about the data and the observations. But the report is still forthcoming, but it's not here yet. So okay, so we have prepared this survey form. Was emailed to all Informatics Europe contacts, about 30 persons, member departments of 150 departments, also Informatics board. So I think something like 200 contacts, I think, altogether, with the request also to forward. We got data on 65 programs, 22 bachelor programs, 43 master's programs, 35 universities in 13 countries. To be precise, these are not these are not always all separate programs, because a single bachelor program or a master's program can have many distinct orientations or specializations or majors or tracks. So actually, the number of, I didn't even count the number of distinct programs, but it's a kind of 65 specialization. We might have something like 40 programs, and then some of them are kind of further branched. Then there were 5 programs which were not really interdisciplinary. They were generic informatics, CS, maybe some electrical engineering. So in the analysis, I dropped these 5 out. And one submission was discovered to be a duplicate. So the total final count of programs or specialization was 59. It's a decent data set, but not very extensive. Okay, so I guess many of you actually were answering to this questionnaire, but let me still give us a background. So there's a bit of a difficulty about you try to understand all the different curricula out there. There's a huge diversity, and it's a lot of web pages and in different languages, from English to French to German to Finnish, Romanian, and so one has to somehow normalize this data collection. So what we did is we tried to identify the fields that are covered by a standard OECD classification field of science and technology, and the areas of informatics that were covered in this program by this ACM IEEE computing curricula recommendation. So we have we're using kind of established taxonomies to specify the questions rather than have very open questions which will lead an inordinate amount of data process. There were some difficulties with the taxonomy. So actually, I think I have them here. So this is this OECD classification. This has 6 major categories: natural sciences, engineering, technology, medical health science, agricultural sciences, social sciences, humanities, and then subcategories. And even the subcategories are very large fields. So you can see all of informatics is there, like a category 1.2, all of mathematics category 1.1. So it's a huge, even this kind of the subclasses, they are big areas. All of chemical engineering is 2.4 here. So, so we asked people to identify not in what a single category, but in which areas in the OECD classification their program falls into. And then we using this computing taxonomy. This was a difficult thing. Maybe one of my observations, it's not immediately relevant to this data collection, was that this ACM IEEE taxonomy, or what is called computing curricula competency classification, it has really sort of become rather bloated. It has now, as you people who have been around for a while, they remember this ACM curricula is a little document, 3 or 4 pages. This is computing. Now it's a 205-page handbook. and it no longer contains a single taxonomy, it contains 7, inconsistent classifications, 7, or actually 6. There's supposed to be one in data science, but there's nothing on the data science, says in development. And actually none of these the existing 6 overlapping conflict taxonomies, none of them contains the area of data science, which is kind of a curious in this day. So we actually added because it could be foreseen that many of our interdisciplinary areas would actually apply data science, data analysis, but kind of artificially added an ad hoc competency area for data analysis because it was non-existent in the computing. The CS curriculum does not have anything called data science, which is peculiar. So anyway, so this is the eventual. This is not any clean taxonomy. I think it was by Enrico's suggestion, just merging taking the CS taxonomy and then adding to it some areas that could be seen relevant from the CE, so the computational engineering classification. So this is what it is. There's algorithm complexity. This is one of the CS classes, CAE, electron. This is from the computational engineering taxonomy, etc. So I think most of the kind of 3-letter abbreviations are from the computational engineering, digital systems design, embedded systems. HCI is actually from the CS classification. Okay, it's not so simple as that. But this kind of merger of these two, plus the adding data analysis there. Here, when the remote people cannot see this. So, okay, so maybe I can show you. I can share my screen, can't I? So if I'm able to. So now the clean data is actually at the moment is in this huge Excel, which I'm not going to start reading, but so there is the country and name of the program and the link to info page and whatever number of graduates, then this kind of this classification, this OECD taxonomy, and so on and so forth. So but okay, so but the Excel itself is of course the important, interesting thing is what emerges from the Excel. So now I stop sharing this and I go back to my slides. Okay, so the respondents were asked to just for each of the informatics competencies in the taxonomy to indicate whether it is required or elective or optional in their programs. Required means that everybody taking this specialization must study something in this area. Elective means it's one of the small number of choices among which one needs to be chosen. And optional means that this competency, whatever it is, digital design or operating system, whatever, is something that can be included. So I would say that kind of the serial use would be kind of this being identified either required or elective. And so this is across all these programs that were covered. This is the number of required or elective emphases or weights given across these identified areas. So there is maybe not surprisingly, so data analysis come out on top. Software development, fundamentals, which is actually, I think it means programming, comes out second. Information management, which is databases and such, is come out third. Then algorithms is mentioned 14 times, and intelligent systems, which I guess these days will be called AI, is there, and then visualization, programming, computer science, and software engineering. So Surprisingly, I mean, somewhat surprising to me, I mean, even this very broad spectrum of informatics competencies, I think almost all of them got a few mentions. There was one which was not mentioned a single time. It was something like a systems resource management, I think it was. This kind of operating systems resource management was the one category that was not identified by any program as of interest. But all the others got a few mentions, but these were like the top 10. So then somehow this OECD taxonomy was too fine-grained for this small amount of data. So somehow it was very difficult to group the programs according to this OECD taxonomy data. Maybe by some kind of a clustering analysis one could have done this, but then I just looked more into the actual contents of the programs, what they sort of seem to me to be. So and this is a little bit like my own classification. Sorry about that, but so there's one program which was in agriculture and forestry, 7 biosciences programs, meaning bioinformatics, synthetic biology, like basic biosciences. 6 health and medicine, which is like medical engineering, but more of this kind of this like technology type programs rather than basic biosciences type programs. 9 business and economics programs, 3 programs which are data science, 7 various types of engineering programs, ranging from materials engineering to various computational engineering, and since 1 on games, 6 various humanities type programs. I would have all the programs listed there, but anyway, so 2 on language and cognition, 2 on like law and like administration, 12 on media and communications, like visual communications, movies, well, whatever, maybe some web communications, 1 quantum technology and 2 social sciences programs. So, so I was not surprised that there were so many bio programs and a decent number of media and also business programs. Personally, I would have been very interested to see more of these, let's say, social sciences or maybe humanities programs. More diversity would have been nice in the data set, but it was not really there in this data set yet. So then I looked at how this required was elective competencies. What were the kind of the top competencies when you go by this type of program? And again, I must say, I mean, there were not great surprises there. So this kind of this is the biosciences. Well, maybe it's kind of other kind of algorithms, data analysis, again, software development fundamentals, which I guess basically means programming. By the kind of the written explicit definition of these competencies, it just says, you learn to build systems at the elementary level. So there's information management, computational science. Everyone else got less than 4 mentions among these, whatever there were 7 biosciences programs. Well, then there's the kind of this health and medicine, again, data science, data information management, intelligent systems. Then a little bit more emphasis on signal processing, but only 2 mentions. The numbers are really small. The business and economics, not surprising, the top is information management, second is data analysis, third is AI or intelligent systems, then algorithm operating systems, programming and software engineering of 3 mentions. Engineering programs, not a very clear winner, but it's algorithm, computational sciences, and programming. Well, what would you expect? Media and communications, graphics and visualization, HCI, information management, computer networks, programming. And okay, so then there are a couple of these classes where there are just a couple of mentions which I didn't list here. So this is basically the message at this moment. So it would have been good to have more replies, as always when you do this kind of surveys, and also greater diversity across countries and themes. Now we, out of the 59 programs that were covered, actually 30 were from Italy. So many thanks to our Italian colleagues to be very diligent in answering this questionnaire. And 10 from Finland. So thank you to our Finnish colleagues for replying. So there's many biosciences programs. I think we have a good view of the biosciences and health and medicine, media and communications, and also this business and economics was well represented. But then only 3 programs across all areas of like non-computer science engineering, and only 2 in social sciences. I would have very much like to have a broader sample of these. And I already discussed the problems of taxonomies. The OECD taxonomies were too detailed to use on this small amount of data, because the data was all over the place in this OECD taxonomy. And this ACM-IEEE competence taxonomy was surprisingly confused and somehow outdated. So I'm a little, let's see, I was surprised about this. And almost all of the informatics competencies, there is a few mentions, but data analysis programming were the clear leaders. There were notable differences in the responses across the semantic interdisciplinary areas, but the amount of data was really too small to make very strong conclusions. And we are still wishing to prepare the detailed report. And I think particularly what we could contribute is kind of summaries and pointers to the program. So I think this would be a contribution. We can make a list of these 60 or so programs, and you kind of some kind of uniform summary, and you can see what is out there if you are interested in. So maybe the question is now, so if we kind of work more on this data, so what are the questions that one would want to have answered from this data? And also, do you see some kind of okay, so I say two issues. So apart from this, let's say, kind of profiling of these different kind of themes of the program. So what else would one want to find out from the data? And then, do you see some indicators as to in which direction to go based on this little data that we have? So, I mean, each of these programs, each university who has developed these programs, they have done them from their own starting points. They have their own portfolio of courses, their own local interests, their own local opportunities. And there's not like any kind of top-down direction of developing these programs. Everybody does what they think is relevant, and they end up looking somehow similar because of natural reasons. But how to say, it's despite there being a certain kind of commonalities, the commonalities are not so strong that one could say that, well, actually what you need is this kind of module, and we'll help you develop this module. Because everybody has their own perspective in doing these things. So I'm a little, unsure what the message from this data is as to about what the world looks like and how we could contribute to the betterment of the world. One thing that I must say, what was a little bit a surprise to me was that at least in this data set, the diversity of the programs was less than I expected. So I was expecting kind of crazy interdisciplinary There was a surprisingly conformist, what would more or less what you would expect, and very few really pros that were out there. So, and also, okay, so that was one thing, and the other one that was a little bit surprised to me, that the kind of this informatics contribution was somehow smaller and like more standard than I would have expected. So because it's mostly, it's mostly really, I mean, actually, this message comes across more clearly if you actually look at the data. So this is almost uniformly, the leaders. We want some data analysis, we want some programming, we want some, maybe we want some AI, and then we maybe want a little bit of algorithms, or let's say in this engineering type things, we maybe want signal processing. But it was somehow, most of the times it was this a little bit disappointing. It was the same message. We want data science, programming, AI, and then little bit of variance there. Somehow taste, maybe databases. So yeah. So so okay, so my own impression is that I mean, let's say that to me there were no great surprises in the data, except that the thing that there were no great surprises. Yeah, this is about what I want to say, so go ahead.
Social sciences, I understand that people in economics, for example,
yeah,
have to do
yes,
analysis, right?
yeah. So
Can they represent it?
so humanities was like literature, and I mean there were not that many humanities programs, so I can. Okay, so let me see. So these were the. Okay, so there's information science, which is basically, I guess, libraries. Then there's kind of digital heritage, so there's museums, archives, digital document management. And then I forget what this one was. Okay, I guess now if I click on the link, so the web page opens somewhere, it doesn't open here, right? So no, it's not worthwhile. So yeah, so complicated. So, but anyways, it's like digital museums, digital document management, libraries, these kind of things.
It's in digital humanities, which is
yes. Okay. But I guess at least in these archives and digital humanities, this data science is an important element these days. So.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the social sciences, yeah, this was, I think we didn't get a very good, I was actually the social sciences representation was a little bit of disappointment to me, because there were no programs in like a computational social science in this set of data. These are more like the programs that were here. They were more like how do you design information systems to serve the society. I think it's called some kind of information system science, sometimes called, but it was not like looking at social sciences data. I wish there had been programs of that type, but there were none, so sorry about that. So, and as you can see, a great diversity of media, a great number of media. It's like the cinema and art and music, and well, of course could have been even a category for us, but it was not so distinct from the media category. So multimedia, visual computing, cinema media, so lots of programs in that direction. Yeah. So the information that one gets from this questionnaire, it's not very deep, because you cannot ask people very complex questions on a questionnaire because they just don't answer. So we try to keep the questionnaire as simple as possible, not asking any details about the course portfolio, which is sort of what is your area and sort of what competencies are relevant to you, and nothing about the number of credits or the contents of the courses, and just kind of very simple questions. And even then, the number of answers we got, this was not too great. And then one can go and look at the web pages. We do have the web pages of all the programs, and so then do like qualitative analysis based on those. But then that's a lot of work. So.
On the other hand, I don't think it's very surprising that data is more or less uniform, because of course universities want to offer courses which attract students.
Yeah.
The courses which attract students these days are artificial intelligence, data analysis, even if they are not studying computer science.
Yes.
It's natural there is a convergence to
Yeah.
something that is useful for
Yeah. But I think one of the starting points was that somehow could one identify some kind of a module of courses that would be relevant to a particular, what I would call theme here, so, or maybe not even a theme, but like a certain group of programs that not everybody needs to do their own, but I guess people like doing their own. I don't know.
The initial data is very biased.
Yes.
For countries at least, for example.
Yeah.
Because it's only a very small set of countries.
Yeah. So we or I can provide some kind of a summary of the data, and with the pointers that we have collected, and with then it's Excel as an annex if you want to do your own analysis. But are there somehow questions that you think could be answered based on this data by looking more closely into this? So we know the countries, we know the names of the programs, we know the level of the programs, and then we know these competencies. But we don't know anything about the actual course contents without going to the curriculum descriptions, which is then involves quite a bit of work. What would you want to know about interdisciplinarity and informatics?
I don't know if this addresses your question, but all this leaves me a little bit alone with respect to the question, what are the requirements we as informatics people have to fulfill in order to train others in digital competence? But if it comes to some kind of digital transformation in sciences, everybody is applying machine learning or something like that. So, and what does that mean for us, or what is our position to that? is it enough to do some data or digital literacy education for all students of all disciplines, or is it more? Do we have to do more? How can we position as a discipline to that? Yeah, what's our position?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe you have to come
Yeah.
closer to talk.
Okay, so can I just give my microphone to Norbert?
Okay, to say that again, that all leaves me a little bit alone with respect to the question, what are the requirements for us as informatic people, as a scientific discipline? What do we have to do for other disciplines? So if it comes to this digital transformation in sciences, everybody is applying digital methods like machine learning and all this, and some big data management things. And what we have now is some kind of common understanding of how to do data or digital literacy education for all students of all disciplines, but possibly it has to be more. And what is our position in regard of that? Do we want to do that, or do we want to leave it to the others? We see that there appear professorships in machine learning and physics and geoscience and so forth. And do we want to do that for them, or do we want to let them do what they think what this is, you know? So this is a little bit my question.
I think this was also one of the fundamental questions that, you know, initiate this whole discussion. So all this, you know, do we need a professor in machine learning in X, where X is business, physics, chemistry, humanities, or do we just need people who do machine learning and then they train it? I don't know, how are these things done in your university? Are you concerned about the way that they are done? Enrico, yes?
I think that what we should do based on this set of data, which is limited but is a valuable one, and of course we could always decide to try to enlarge the answers. I think that what we should do may be focusing on, like we have shown in some slides, on sectors, health informatics or business informatics. I think what we should say is which are the required competences or knowledge area that are needed in that area, so that the degree can be considered a business informatics or health informatics and so on. Otherwise, as Norbert has said, I mean, people will think that just to do a business informatics degree, it's enough to have some programming and some artificial intelligence because now it's trendy, or something else. So I think we should say, look, we understand that there are mixed area, X informatics, but we think that either for some specific or in general, there are some key areas that cannot be skipped. That I think should be our position. Then, of course, people can do whatever they like, but from our viewpoint, I think we should. This is what we should say.
Mark, do you want to say something?
I think we had this discussion before, whether this is about what informatics should provide.
Sorry, Martin, let's.
Yeah.
Or whether we have something like, I think we had this discussion before, and eventually we decided that with this survey, we wanted to see what's around with respect to just interdisciplinary things without looking into, well, what is informatics providing? What do the others provide? Who should provide this? But just try to figure out what's around, so that we maybe can draw then some conclusions from that. I think it's not about the discussion where the machine learning professorship should be, whether that should be in biology or in informatics.
But do you agree with Enrico's idea of providing some kind of recommendations that for a bit? So, okay. Okay, so the next question, so should we just take our recommendation based on what the data indicates, saying, well, the business informatics degrees, they seem to have this, hence we recommend this, or do we put our own view on this, that in our view, business informatics should have something? Yeah, and, okay.
I think that one thing we should do would be to look at how good is our coverage country-wise, because my feeling is that for some country we have been able to do a better collection of data. In other country there are lower coverage of data. So I mean, my goal would be to try to draft some recommendation, but before going there, let's be sure that we are not overlooking some large country, because then it would be, I mean, not so nice. So I don't know if you have some statistics about by country. I mean, you said we have 59 programs,
and 30 from Italy and 0 from France.
Okay, so then there is a bias. Then there is a bias. So it's a.
For Germany, the coverage is poor either, so I would prefer to have a second round.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there could be a risk of never ending, but if there is such a balance, 30 examples from Italy and 0 from France, then I mean, I would not say this is a European recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, Paolo, please.
Hi. Yeah, I kind of agree with Enrico in the sense that let me say, I do believe even more than Enrico that it is way too early to make recommendations, because we really need to understand what are the goals of these various programs, because they might be interdisciplinary or be programs with a minor or variations thereof. And so I do understand that it is important for us, for our communities, to have recommendations so that each of us in his or her own university can, I mean, has the availability of some instrument to say, hey, I have an international recommendation that says that if you want to claim interdisciplinarity with informatics, then there is some minimum requirement. But at the same time, this is kind of defensive. I mean, I heard this morning that in one of our universities, some law professors are proposing a program that includes some AI with no AI professors involved or whatever. Then the point there, I mean, what should be our approach with respect to programs of this kind? Should we try to oppose these programs because they do not have the AI competencies? Should we propose ourselves to contribute to the degree that is possible? Or should we say, no, you really need to have more informatics and AI from the point of view of informatics? I mean, let's say politics, academic politics is always very complex. So I believe that before trying to give a picture and way before trying to give a recommendation, we really need to know what is the status of the situation. And let me also say that I am glad that you got more than 50 contributions from Italy, which might mean that my action was effective in getting contributions. But I'm absolutely not sure that that is a really significant coverage of what is offered even in my country, because that could be biased as well for a number of different reasons. So I think that we really need more knowledge. That's point one. And point two, before trying to make some recommendation, we should probably try to classify our programs. I mean, the programs that we find, in the sense that I mean, I don't know which would be the clusters, which would be the classes for these programs, but we should understand how we can differentiate the various programs on the basis of the quantity and quality of the multidisciplinarity involved, especially the informatics multidisciplinarity which is involved. And I understand that this is not really a strong suggestion, but I believe that if we want to be effective, we really need to think more about the issues and to understand the phenomenon in a greater detail.
So if I'm understanding the comments in general correctly, so there seems to be some kind of a support for the idea that we would at least look into the possibility of making like some kind of area-specific recommendations that in whatever, well, business is the obvious target. So in a business informatics programs, you should have these things. It's not a quite straightforward task to make such recommendations, but I mean, considering this Paolo's example of like a law and AI program, which actually has, I mean, if I understood correctly, it has rather light coverage of AI. It maybe this kind of recommendations would be justified, that we could say that, well, you know, if you are going to include informatics, so then in your area you actually should, you know, include this. And then it's a different topic, different issue who actually teaches this, but you know, you cannot call something like an X informatics by just putting one programming course there or one AI, you know, introduction to AI course there. That's not serious. But then this classification of the programs, that is not an kind of obvious thing. So so one could try, yeah, one could try to do that based on the OECD classification, but then one really needs more data because there's so many classes and the programs sort of all over the place there. Or then one should somehow try to group it, do some kind of clustering of programs versus this, jointly with these OECD categories. And this is just somehow my, you know, weak substitute or proxy for the serious classification. I just really, I looked at each of the programs and, you know, they sort of felt to me that they were pretty much sort of somehow fell into these categories. But this is very unscientific and maybe it should be done better. But this is a little non, I mean, always these taxonomies, they are, you know, this taxonomy is difficult. Doing taxonomies is difficult work. So that's why, you know, CS taxonomy is diverging, and because it's so difficult to create a good taxonomy. But we could definitely think about this. You know, I mean, in the ideal case, we would have 7 areas of interest or 10 areas of interest, which are somehow well justified, and then we could make a recommendation for each of these that in this area, you know, the relevant informatics competencies, in our opinion, are these. But yeah, it requires thinking. Enrico, you have something to say.
Yeah, so also based on Paolo remarks, my suggestion would be to plan for short term to write a report presenting these results as a matter of fact, I mean, as a preliminary study and analysis of what is the situation, providing the statistics, providing the raw data as open data to everybody that wants to reflect on it, and providing this kind of synthesis that you have prepared, which is interesting, where for the program, for the areas where there are more programs like you have done, we observe that there are some sub areas of informatics that are highly frequent, and without calling them recommendation, just observing that there appears to be some common theme, and declaring that we want to do a deeper analysis to understand better the situation. But for the time being, I think it would be important to give back the result of our analysis to the community, because people have contributed, that we have to give them back. But as a draft, an intermediate report, a preliminary report on the state of situation. And then we have to work both on trying to identify, if I have understood what Paolo said, the fact that not all interdisciplinary programs are equal in terms of their goal. Some of them are meant, if I have understood, to actually build a mixed profile. Others might be focused on complementing a basic profile with additional competencies, and the two cases are different. One, we should try to understand in which way, in our second questionnaire, we can ask elicit answer from people helping us in classifying things in this way. But this is something that we have to discuss in online meeting that like the one we did when we prepared this questionnaire. But so I would suggest to start in parallel with these two things, finalizing the outcome that we have got, presenting the statistics and making the data available if anybody wants to have a look, and then reflecting on how we can improve the data collection for the second phase. And then for the second phase, we should try to do a focused effort on those countries that in the first round have been not answering, because we don't want to have a second round and we will have black holes of knowledge.
Yeah, okay, sounds like a reasonable plan. It's not so easy to elicit answers to this questionnaire, so what can one do?
Yeah, but it can be done if you call people to action again and again. I mean,
Can you please fill in the questionnaire? Can you please fill in the questionnaire? Yeah. It was not a complex questionnaire. We tried to really keep it as simple as possible. There were some questions originally about the credits and maybe some more details of the courses, but all these were kind of struck out, and because you start asking about details, nobody will give you. Let's just kind of ask taxonomically. So, how much do you value this thing? And do you? Okay, yes.
Just a very quick comment on that, because I know that providing questionnaire to people is also stressing from both sides. Those ones that have to prepare the questionnaire and to reach people, ask them, please fill it in, and to the people that have to fill it, the question. So in order to provide maybe a kind of data set of data coming from questionnaire which is distributed equally across the countries, instead of contacting all the possible universities there that may have interests, or that we think that may have interest in fill up this question, maybe it would be better to identify just a small amount of big university in each country to interact with, because in that case you have less noise in the interaction. You focus on one specific in 3 universities per countries that are very big, that contains a huge availability of different kind of courses, and that you can use a kind of let's say population that may be representative for that country, because in that way you basically have a specific effort by involving only a selected amount of university people, and maybe makes the whole thing manageable. And you take data that are more or less similar across countries. So if you ask 3 universities from Italy, 3 universities from Spain, 3 universities of France, and you select the biggest one, for instance, maybe you have comparing data across European institutions that can provide you a picture which is not complete, but completeness is not a matter here. You won't have the complete picture of all the university across Europe. So just choosing the university that may be a good representative for that specific country will works in a good way, in good shape, and allow you in particular to compare also results across country in a, let's say,
We can think of this. I think one, maybe you are right that maybe this should be more targeted. If we go to do another round, so be even more targeted than it was now. So, what one also could do is just try to, by Google, find, interdisciplinary programs with some keywords, and then, if you find something of interest, you send them a questionnaire. Say, we are very interested to know more about your program. Can you please fill in this questionnaire? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I would say that maybe try to interface with the local community, with the association, local association, Informatics Association. Also, yes.
Yeah.
I forgot about it. Maybe instead of looking for this data on Google, which could be dangerous from one point of view, since we have national associations, maybe asking the national association to select the university.
I see, okay. And then approaching directly.
Yeah, by the association, directly by the association.
Okay, sounds, yeah, sure. Can you take the mask away, because otherwise you...
Okay, so I'm thinking about finishing the report, and when we are asking some universities to answer this questionnaire, is first sending the report to say, okay, you are working on this. Do you agree with this, or do you want to add things apart from asking the questionnaire? But finishing first the report and then send them to all those universities and say, okay, it's it correct? It match your idea about, I don't know, biosciences or whatever? And I think it will be of great interest to finish it first.
Okay. So, there's still Paolo.
Yeah, as you might imagine, I'm thinking while this discussion goes on. So maybe now I'm saying slightly different things from what I said before. Let me say that we should really try to understand what is the goal of this whole activity. And the more I think on it, the more I reach the conclusion that the goal of the report should mainly be to give to our colleagues the ideas of what are the kind of things that can be done with various different approaches. And so I agree with the things the last two colleagues mentioned, that we need to be proactive in our countries or in subsets of our countries to make sure that we get contributions from universities and colleagues who have new ideas and new experiences. Obviously, as we said earlier, we would really like to have a complete coverage. A complete coverage obviously is impossible. We need to aim at a good coverage. To get the good coverage, we need to be sure what is, let's say, the taxonomy of models. For example, I was just now looking at the message I exchanged with my colleagues in the spring when the questionnaire was open, and I realized that I had forgotten, but I realized that I had to give some comments to some colleagues who had initially filled the questionnaire with reference not to programs but to individual courses. And then I told them that's not the kind of multidisciplinarity we are interested in now, because otherwise we will get thousands of answers and they would be difficult to collect. So we really need to make a synthesis of what we have, and I confirm that I am available to contribute to this synthesis, and then on the basis of this synthesis to understand how to interact with people. I would probably say that we should try to reach all once again, but I also get the point that Silvio was mentioning, that we need to stimulate, let's say, interesting people to give contributions, and probably we should do both. I mean, we should have questionnaire open to everybody, but the local, national organizations should be very active in soliciting answers from the colleagues and the universities they feel to be more active in the field.
So, finalize the preliminary report on this data, such as it is, and then distribute it to the community, and you know, try to be more proactive in getting a more, you know, good coverage of areas which are still little covered, and as was already discussed many times, so there are many things that one could try to achieve, but the one thing that has gotten somehow support is try to maybe find a, you know, good taxonomy of the areas where this informatics interdisciplinary programs is relevant, and then either get a good empirical picture or make some, you know, community recommendations of what the informatics competencies in this area should be. Not in terms of specific courses, but you should have, you know, data science, programming, whatever is relevant. And
there is another aspect that should be, that should be, I think, considered with that. I mean, by analyzing the courses that are multidisciplinary right now available in the various countries is good, because it allows you to have a picture of which kind of needs they have in their courses. But there is another aspect that should be treated, because there may be some multidisciplinary course that wants to introduce informatics, let's say, teachings there, that maybe starts a bit, you know, they just have artificial intelligence courses there in one specific curricula, without providing enough basic courses that are necessary to really understand the topic. For instance, if you have, I don't know, something in, I don't know, in the humanities domain, okay, and you start teaching artificial intelligence because it's a trend topic right now, and you have courses about artificial intelligence, and you don't teach them, for instance, the basics of, I don't know, algorithms, data structures, so the very basic thing of informatics. What I don't see the point of teaching artificial intelligence. So it's not only it should not be only a recommendation of what are the needs of the various courses depending on what they want to do according to their specific discipline, but should be also some sort of recommendation that comes from informatics domain, saying, look, good to have these kind of things, this kind of multidisciplinary approach that you want to have informatics within your course. But if you want to really do it in a proper way, you should also include that course and that course that are a basic starting point that you should teach before going through more specialistic courses like artificial intelligence and this kind of things.
Yeah, these things need to be discussed, and I mean, I can just foresee, I mean, I completely see your point, but, and I fully agree with it. I'm just, okay, it's something that one needs to think about, because the more credits one tries to push on these programs, the more pushback one gets from them because there's a limited number of credits and they wish to, I think in many cases you wish to minimize the informatics part so that there is more credits for the whatever the substantive part. And it's actually when you look at the specific programs, you notice this very clearly that the informatics somehow it has to be there, but it's somehow kept to a minimum so that so.
Yeah, it depends on the program.
Yes. So yeah. So anyway, so I think there was a good message from the community and more work to do. So will Kitwan and I.
There is a hand raised there.
Oh, get out.
Okay, thanks. In my opinion, we should ask the informaticians responsible for these programs. Why do I say that? Because in my experience, most of the interdisciplinary programs are not located at faculties or departments of informatics. For example, we have some kind of a hybrid program in connection with a faculty of mechanical engineering, but they have their own computer scientists there, and they have their own computer scientists at our University of Economics, for example, yeah, and they are normally not involved in our specific discussions here. So what about coming into contact with them and discussing these issues with these guys who are located within the second areas, yeah, for example, life sciences, for example, economics, for example, physics, with regard to quantum technologies and so on, and talk to them and ask them and involve them in these questions.
Yeah. Then one just needs to figure out how to do that. It would be very interesting to hear their view, but
You have to interact with the department. Sorry, you need to speak with the department at the Department of Computer Science at that university. I mean, I'm one of these examples. I'm working at the Department of Classical Philology and Italian Studies, running teaching in a digital humanities degree. So I'm not formally at the Department of Computer Science, but I come from there, basically. I have relation with them. And usually within the university, the Department of Computer Science is aware of the courses that have computer scientists that are not in force at the department, but they are running something. So I think that the contact point should be always within the university to the Department of Computer Science that is aware of the courses within the university that have informaticians working on different departments, basically. It's the most reasonable approach to follow, because otherwise I agree that it is difficult. Well, this questionnaire should be asked to the right people, and it was exactly what I tried to say also before. And the right people maybe are those informaticians that are working in this interdisciplinary curriculum, because they have been involved by those departments directly and not by the Department of Computer Science, but there is still a relation between the departments somehow, if you try to run it up, this kind of interdisciplinary curriculum. So yes, starting from the Department of Computer Science, I think is always a good choice to identify the right people to stress on the topic.
Well, this is exactly what I was saying when I said that we should be active in looking for programs. This means that we should be active in the community, and then in each university we need to be active to understand what is being offered.
okay, Norbert, yes, please.
Yes, we in Germany started such a discussion.
Sorry about this, but hybrid meetings, there is nothing we can do about this.
No, I just wanted to quickly agree to what Gerald was saying. So we in Germany started a discussion that we as the Fakultätentag Informatik, Fakultätentag is the association of the informatics department, and there are Fakultätentag of the other disciplines, and we are talking to these Fakultätentag in order to identify which competences these guys want to have for their students. So we started to discuss with the physics Fakultäten, for example. It's slow, the progress we make in this discussion, but we started it, and I think this is also such a review.
But you already know all these things as regards Germany. So what we can just ask you.
Yes, I want to have second round.
Yeah. Okay.
Next time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There are many things of interest and concern to us. So what do the other areas need? What we think that they need? Who should be teaching these things? And I think that it's not. I mean, even the answers are not clear. So teaching. It's not clear that the computer scientists are the best teachers for computing for the humanities. Maybe actually the humanities people are better in alignment with the needs than the kind of the pure computer science people. So, but I'm at the moment. This is such a difficult question that I'm somehow agnostic about this. I would my current focus would maybe be more on these competencies. Try to identify what kinds of competencies are needed in what types of programs, and then try to make some recommendation based on that. I mean, this discussion about who should be teaching, it's a kind of can of worms, and it's very difficult. And it's very also kind of a location specific. So one thing may work in one place, and the other place something completely different might be appropriate. But I think these competencies are something that one might be able to give like a semi-objective recommendation. Okay, anyway, so that was a really good discussion, and thanks for that. Do we still have questions on the? No, so now we are already in, 3:30, closing remarks, just on time. So basically, okay, thank you for the day. It has been always inspiring and productive, and we got actually lots of concrete things, I think, moving in the morning, and we continue with the this open letter, and also maybe prospective, like a broader project in this area of like open citations, open bibliometric tools. And there's good feedback on this, very preliminary analysis of data, and Kitvan and I will produce the report, and we'll distribute that, and then we'll, I guess, get back to you in one way or the other to how we should set up the next data collection round. So who should we approach, and in what way? And definitely we should send them the report and say, well, here's what we have, and we would like you to help us improve the data volume and quality that we have. And also I think it was very good to have this message that maybe the right focus is the competencies and some area-specific competencies. Try to identify those and make some recommendations based on those. Keep things developing on a good track. But I guess the one question, so now we already covered so many themes over the few years of this collaboration. So maybe are there any ideas? I hesitate to raise this question of yet another theme, but sort of for the next ECSS, so any wishes for? I mean, there are all these existing things that are going on. So there's the open kind of a bibliometrics, and now this interdisciplinary informatics still keeps going on, and I hesitate to ask this question, but what would you want to? And at the ECSS in Hamburg, so what should be the topic of this workshop be? Norbert.
There was already a proposal saying the workforce for the digital transformation.
Okay. I'm not sure if this is like the this is like an ECSS topic, but this is maybe not like so much for the informatics national associations. I think maybe, I mean, the whole ECSS could be around this, but specifically this national associations.
This was meant to be the model for the overall.
Yeah, that I, you know, of course up to discussion, but this seems like a very good topic, but maybe it's a bit broad for this national associations collaboration.
We had a survey with the National Association where we asked them to list topics in order of interest for them.
Number 1 was interdisciplinarity, number 2 was research evaluation. I forget what number 3 was, but we could of course take up research evaluation from the assessment point of view. I don't know. Has been discussed many times, but has not been resolved yet, I think. Or we could go back to the survey that we did. I forget what the number 3 was there. Also, this interdisciplinarity is very close to my heart, so I'd be glad to talk about assessing interdisciplinary work. But maybe this is just me, so.
Not teaching. I mean, the issue of research evaluation. We had the meeting in Zurich in 2019. I remember where, as Norbert recalled, we came up with a discussion with a common statement. I think we had in mind to discuss whether we could produce some better bibliometry tool. I mean, repeating that I personally am against the use of bibliometry tool, but they are there and we cannot avoid their use. So could we see whether the various efforts that are done in various countries can be improved and be considered a kind of European approach to do bibliometry in informatics? That could be. You remember in Zurich we discussed there for the community of the Spanish and the Italian community did on their conference classification, and so we could start again discussing. Okay, what can we bring this tool to a kind of European level, something that may be changing what we feel needs to be changed, so that it can be considered a good tool for the European community. Because if we are able to arrive at this point, then in each country we would be in a better position towards our agencies to say, okay, look, I'm suggesting that instead of using that commercial tool or the other commercial tool or this free tool that you don't recognize because is dirty, is not cleaned, please use this tool, which is not the tool of the Italian community, it's the tool of the European community. So it's not something that, I mean, I do on my own benefit. I suggest because it's the state of the art at the international level. I mean, we as a Europe can say we are an international community. So one possibility would be to discuss all together on what can be done. And it's an old issue, but I mean, we need to come back to the same issue and discuss more and more, because I mean, this is the European integration process requires a lot of time.
I think that also aligning this idea with the existing manifestos out there that talk about assessment in general would be fine as well, because the work done with the conferences was great because we didn't have anything about that similar to that in the past, so allowed us to use some sort of ranking for let's say proposing papers published at conferences and not only in journal in a formal way. But still, it has a similar problem that has in the end journal impact factor. You are just having a value evaluating a journal, and you use that value for evaluating a single person, which is not exactly what, for instance, DORA is trying to push. DORA is not against using metrics for assess even individuals. What they say is just avoid to use metrics that assess journal to assess individual, because this is wrong. That's the point. So even come up with suggestion for do a more transparent and appropriate assessment according to the specific context you are assessing. People, institutions, journals themselves would be great. Contextualized, of course, in the open computer science community that has some peculiarities that others doesn't have. Software, considering software as part of the assessment or the individual contribution of a person or of the institution who proposed that software is something that is totally missing here right now. But we write a lot of software, research software there, which is basically useful for our research, but we don't get back any, let's say, rewards, academically speaking, in terms of career, for instance, for that time that we spend in developing software for research. So there are multiple, let's say, perspectives that maybe stays at different layers that should be analyzed in this context by following, let's say, international guidelines already there for doing good assessment. I was thinking about DORA, but there is also the Leiden guidelines on research assessment that are still very useful and been done by scientisticians that used to work on that specific thing. So there are different things that I think we should start to align formally with in order to do something that is recognizable at European but also international level. So,
the point is that in terms of declaration, we already, as Informatics Europe, we already prepared two statements about research evaluation in computer science. The very first one was done more than 15 years ago, I think, and it was published in Communication with ECM. Then we had the second one a few years ago. So in terms of a general statement, I think we are already aligned with this international declaration. The problem is when we come to practical solutions. So how to evaluate papers in conference, how to evaluate papers in journal, and also these newer items that you said, how to evaluate software, how to evaluate data collection of data. So this could be items to be discussed.
It would actually be interesting to have, I know Gerald is asking for a turn, but just to comment, it would be interesting to hear some, ideas about how to assess software and data collections and open science contributions.
I think in France, they are quite advanced on this, so they have strategy. I remember INGENIERIA more than 10 years ago suggested that for research, for evaluation of researchers, evaluation of software should be taken into account. So to
tell the truth, I have no idea how this could be done. It's not. It cannot be just a number of INGENIERIA too.
They should have experience.
But I could tell you it would be because they were involved in that. So,
But now Gerald wants to. Let's give the turn to Gerald. Gerald, please. We can't hear you. Okay, so now.
Sorry. Enrico, I'm a little bit hesitating to focus on this kind of metrics in evaluation, since that resembles me to say we know that's a wrong way, but let's do the best and do it in the best manner this wrong way. Yeah. I think it would be much more appropriate to develop guidelines how to do appropriate research evaluation in computer science, and that should include, as was said before, the context of the evaluation, since evaluation has always to be with regard to a specific goal of the evaluation. Yeah, so we need to include the context, and we need to include different artifacts, not only software, but for example, some of our colleagues, they design advanced user interfaces, yeah. Or if you look at the Internet of Things, it's a combination of software and hardware artifacts, yeah. We should also include research contributions to solving scientific problems. If you look at the TU Delft, they recently have stated a new way of evaluation and assessment, and that includes research which is published, but also research results that contribute significantly to society and societal problems. Yeah, and this would be a kind of comprehensive evaluation, and I think to develop guidelines in this direction and to find ways how to do this appropriate, that would be very valuable. In specific, I think yes, data and metrics, they are valuable, but everybody says, for example, also the Leiden Manifesto, they say data should support qualitative evaluation. Yeah, and if we develop a goal for quantitative evaluation by metrics, it's my what I fear that we will do then is to focus on this quantitative bibliometric evaluation and neglect all the other aspects. We know they are important. So I think it would be a better way to discuss appropriate guidelines for a comprehensive research evaluation in computer science, and to discuss how can artifacts, software, all other artifacts and contributions to society included into research evaluation. And yeah, and how can we convince governments like those in Italy and Spain that not only that metrics and bibliometric evaluations are not the only way to evaluate research results and research outcomes?
Well, I guess we could look into this research evaluation specifically from this perspective, that it's not just counting publications, metrics, but these more qualitative things that need more qualitative assessment, which is like artifacts, contribution to society, software broadly. And I mean, I have no knowledge of this area, but this sounds maybe something very good for us to understand, because this is a lot of what we are doing.
I mean,
also let me stress one portion of Gerald's comment, which I really find very interesting. What is the goal of evaluation? The real goal of evaluation is to improve the future. It is not to give a prize related to the past. We do evaluate because we want to make progress in the future. So when hiring, we should evaluate the record of people to make sure that these records give hints on what the individual can do in the future according to the specific goals you have in mind. If you evaluate a department, you are not awarding a prize to the department, but you decide that you fund a department because it can produce good results, and this is based on what the department made in the past. So
So I made one comment saying what is the goal, and the goal is to go towards the future. The second comment is what Gerald explicitly said, that you have different settings in which you make evaluation, which is hiring, and as it was mentioned earlier in the day, for example, in Italy, but also in France, you have two different kinds of evaluations for hiring. One is habilitation, or whatever you want to call it, and the other one is actual local selection and hiring. Then you evaluate projects, you evaluate departments, and so forth. And each of these evaluations should require a tuning of the procedure, of the things you evaluate, and possibly a use of metrics. As well as many of you, despite being a database professor, or probably because of being a database professor, I don't like metrics except as elements to be considered, definitely not as measures. But in any case, even if you use metrics with all the caveats I mentioned, then there are probably different metrics in different frameworks, in different contexts.
So, research evaluation.
Yeah, let's agree on research evaluation, and we will discover exactly how to shape it. Because it's, I mean, again, I would like to throw away all bibliometric tools, but I know that, I mean, they are there, so they will be used, and we have to defend ourselves. In terms, I mean, I agree with Gerard's position about working on procedures, but I mean, we should start from the two documents we have already produced, because the issue of evaluation of various artifacts that we produce is something that we already considered. So we should not write a report that say for the third time the things that we have already said. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time. But certainly, what we said in the past can be improved. And considering, I mean, pragmatically that bibliometric tools are there and will be used, we should try to put our community in the better position to defend against the misuse of this tool. But I mean, I think probably a good approach could be to have a meeting that, I don't know if we, I mean, I'm thinking maybe we could have also a one-day meeting in Zurich in something around March, like we did in the past, because sitting an entire day and having a Zoom conference is not the best way of working. And since we will be in the shaping phase of this new phase of work on research evaluation, I think it might be better that we are all together in the same room and discuss it. So this could be a proposal.
And okay, I used to send this many times, and I just expressed that I agree with these bibliometrics. They, as you say, so they are there, and they have their place, or at least we need to defend our place when we are talking about like institutional assessment. So then, to what degree they can or should be used to individual assessment, that's a matter of debate. And as also as Paolo was pointing out, and Gerald, that in individual assessment there are many contexts. It's kind of a, is it project funding? Is it hiring? Is it promotion? Is it some kind of award? You know, there are so many entities, and people are in very different stages in their careers, and maybe different things are relevant at different stages. But I would personally like to understand more about, because there's so much expressed many times. We should pay more attention to these more somehow non-quantifiable things like software, artifacts, social contribution. So how does one go about this? I do understand the methods, but I really personally I don't really know. I mean, Jean-Marc is going to tell us about software assessment, and I'm not necessarily now, but you are welcome to, you know. But I think we are more or less, this is the way that the planning is going now, and Jean-Marc will just tell us how much we evaluate software.
Yeah, so what they did at INGENIERIA is that they, as Enrico said, they started thinking about it something like maybe 10 years ago or something. And the idea was to try to evaluate the software production of researchers. And of course, this software is not the same as another software. So the idea was to come up with a multi-criterion grid somehow, where the producer of the software actually ran a self-evaluation, saying that, well, this software, this is the size of the software with some relevant metrics. This is what they call the audience. Is it just for an inner software for the team that is developing it? Is it for the full world, 1 million users, something in between, and so on? So there are some objective criteria. Is it well tested? So tested a little bit, a lot, fully, or whatever. What is the documentation, and so on. So there are plenty of criteria for somehow define the profile of the software. And right now it is actually implemented, it is deployed at the level of INGENIERIA. So when there is an evaluation of a team, we just list the number of software and we run the self-evaluation of each of the software that is there for the reviewers of the team to assess basically and to check or to quantify the production. So I think that's probably a good, I mean, there have been lengthy discussion of what kind of criteria would be useful. So I think it could be a good basis to generalize, to propose. And I think that it could also work for, not just for software, but for other artifacts, such as building a database or something, or even there's been the dimension of the Internet of Things. It might not be just software, a hardware prototype, could fit in, and also Internet of Things kind of construction. So I think it's pretty good for that. The only limitation I see right now is that it's useful at the team level, but as I've seen, maybe it's because it's too recent or too young, but we did not see yet any influence of that on the career of the people. So it looks like it is not really, I mean, it's there, but it's not really used for the evaluation of people and for the promotions. That's my personal opinion on that just me thinking that. So this is not the consensus of INGENIERIA, for instance, but my impression is that it is not yet used because it's not so easy. I mean, hash number, it's a number. Here you have a multi-criteria evaluation of a set of software. You cannot reduce it to a number. Yeah. So it seems that people have trouble for when you need to rank people for assessing and for promotion or for recruiting people. It seems that it's not used that much, I would say, or as much as I would love it.
Yeah. So maybe we could have some, more detailed, with examples and presentations from these slides about how to assess these more qualitative things, and then the discussion of, if there's some advice that we could provide based on our understanding of these things. I mean, as you said, there's software, there is data, there's contribution to society, open science, all these things that are somehow not so immediately quantifiable. How should one assess those? I think this, at least for me, this would be something that I'm interested in. I really don't know much about. I understand the numbers, but okay. I mean, but let's get back to the details.
Yeah, but let me just understand whether it would be okay to have a physical meeting in Zurich in March. I mean,
Depends.
March or April, Enrico, when the weather is better and we can sit outside, maybe. I'm not sure how the pandemic is going on.
You know, I'm saying March because usually around March we have a meeting of the Executive Committee of Informatics Europe in Zurich. So we would like to avoid to move people too many times. That's the only issue.
Okay, I understand.
And Zurich, I mean, I mean, I agree, it's not Rome, but it's not so cold, so we can survive.
It's Rome, but it's not Helsinki either. So.
Yeah.
Do we already have a date?
Dates? No, we don't have dates.
No, I don't think we have a date, but I mean, if you agree, then we will discuss in the executive committee tomorrow, and we will suggest you a date.
Okay, we wrap up.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for once again a very inspired discussion. It's always fun to meet this crowd. So brilliant minds with brilliant ideas. So it's always amazing. So thanks everyone. We finish at 2 to 4, and well, it's not my task to thank you for behalf of ECSS and Informatics Europe, the chairman's task. Do you want to say closing words for the conference for this group?
Yeah. So actually, this is the last session of this trend of the ECSS. So I thank you all for being present here, and I thank you people remotely connected. I know that you are remotely connected because you could not be here. So thanks for having find time in your schedule. And I hope to see all you in Hamburg. Maybe those remotely connected, the next ECSS will be in Hamburg in the end of October. And of course, before next ECSS, I hope to see you in Zurich in this March meeting. So thanks again, and I mean, you have a safe trip back, and you have a safe. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.